guys, my name is Victoria and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a simultaneous book unhaul and a book haul. And the reason for that is that I splurged last month when they had the Barnes & Noble book haul sale. And so I kind of treated myself to books that I shouldn't have treated myself to because I have a whole lot of books that are unread on my shelves. And so what I decided to do was, since I bought 10 books, I actually am going to unhaul, I think, 11 books. So that way I can justify my splurge and my spending habits, and I feel a little better about it and I can sleep at night. So the way this video is going to work is that I'm going to show you first a book that I'm hauling, and then second a book that I'm unhauling, and I'll just kind of go between the two. The first book that I picked up from Barnes & Noble is Middlemarch by George Eliot. I've never read George Eliot before. This is a massive classic, but I've heard great things about this book in particular. I think from a Book Olive, who is a booktuber who I really admire. I think I remember her really liking this one. I don't know a lot about the plot. I know it's set in England in the 1830s, and it says on the back here, the very qualities that set Dorothea apart from the materialistic, mean-spirited society around her also lead her into a disastrous marriage with a man she mistakes for her soulmate. So it sounds like it's about social classes in England in the 1800s, and it sounds like it's going to be a very detailed picture of life from that time, and so I'm definitely looking forward to getting to this. I may have to save it for like a readathon of some kind so that I can make sure I push myself through, because I don't even know how many pages this is. It's massive. It's nearly 800 pages. So yes, I definitely want to get to this. Don't know when though, but yeah, Middlemarch. A book that I'm going to unhaul this month is this random little book, and it's actually, I think, was my husband's, but I know he's not using it, and I already asked him about it. But it is The Elements of Style by William Strunk Jr. and E.B. White. It's just a little thing, and it's I think a very old and outdated guide to writing and like academic papers and prose and principles of composition. But you can see this volume is pretty old and ancient. This is the 3rd edition. Oh, and it was a Pomona High School textbook. So yeah, this was my husband's book. He went to Pomona High School. But neither one of us have any use for this. My husband is going back to school, but I don't plan on writing any academic papers anytime soon, and we have the internet now, and so little books like this are just kind of a little bit defunct, sadly, but they are. You know, if I was writing a paper, I would probably look for some more recent sources to help me out. So goodbye to you. I picked up one more classic from Barnes & Noble, and that is The Beautiful and the Damned by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now, the only other book that I've read by Fitzgerald is The Great Gatsby, and I was realizing that when I read it, I didn't enjoy it at all. I actually hated The Great Gatsby. Here's my copy of The Great Gatsby. It's in ruins, and it looks like a dog chewed the cover. It's got like some bite marks in it. But this copy is pretty mangled at this point, and if I ever want to reread it, I think I'm gonna get another copy. And so I'm unhauling one Fitzgerald book and getting another one. So unhaul and haul. And it is a cautionary tale of reckless ambition and squandered talent set amid the glitter of Jazz Age New York. So it sounds great and sounds decadent and dramatic, and so yeah, I don't know anyone really talking about this book on BookTube. I haven't seen very many reviews on it, so I know very little about it and very little about the plot, but I was like, you know what, I gotta take another chance on Fitzgerald, try it out, and then maybe another day I will get a little bit of a less beat up copy of The Great Gatsby and I'll retry that again too. But yeah, this one's a pretty hefty one too. It's a lot longer than The Great Gatsby. The next book that I picked up this month was one that I'm very excited about, but it's an author that is very beloved around these parts, and I haven't gotten to him yet, and it is a little bit embarrassing at this point, but I picked up Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, and I've seen lots of glowing reviews for this. This is a young adult novel by him, and it is about a girl at flight school, and believe it's more on the sci-fi side than the fantasy side. But I saw this on the table. It was the only copy at the Barnes & Noble in my town, and so I had to grab it before anybody else did. Only $10 for this big fat hardcover, so I feel like that's a pretty good deal. That was a steal. So now I have two Brandon Sanderson books. I have this one and I have Elantris, and haven't read either, but guess we're just gonna collect Brandon Sanderson until we actually read them. I think I'm gonna put this higher up on my priority and try to read this one this year, because the new one comes out, the second volume of this series. So I think it would be cool if I caught up and I got to read it with the rest of the world when the second volume comes out. So maybe October or November I will prioritize this. And then I'm going to show you just two little books that I'm going to unhaul. And so I'm going to unhaul this musical form and musical performance by Edward T. Cone. This was a book I had to get for my undergrad, highlighted all over it, so I don't know what I'm going to do with it exactly. So I could try to give it away to a used bookshop, but I have written in it with lots of highlighter. So I don't really plan on reading this. It's a bunch of academic musical essays and kind of dense music theory kind of things, and I just don't know at what point in my life I would ever need to pick this up again, so it's going away. I'm also going to get rid of this academic writing book that I had to get, I think, in high school, maybe college. Actually, yes, college. And it's called They Say, I Say, The Moves That Matter in Academic Writing. Again, not doing any academic writing. Don't super plan to. I really don't want to go back to school ever in my life. I feel like I'm just unhauling a bunch of books from school, but it changes a little later, you'll see, but those are all like very academic school type books. The next book that I picked up is Bridge of Clay by Marcus Zusak. I read The Book Thief last year and I really enjoyed it. I liked it very much. I liked Marcus Zusak's very kind of quiet, understated style of writing. And this book, it's very ambiguous of what this is about, and I think I want to keep it that way. All I know is it's a family drama. It's about 5 brothers, and I think there's one brother that has some sort of tragedy around him, and that's where our story starts. I haven't seen a lot of reviews for this. I know this one, I think people said it was a little slower moving, which I'm okay with if it's good, and I liked The Book Thief very much, so decided to pick up Bridge of Clay. And then concurrently, I will be unhauling this book, which was a gift, and I feel terrible. I always feel bad when someone gets me a book because they think I'll like it, and it's maybe not my cup of tea at all, but you can't tell them that. It's a Chicken Soup for the Soul book. I used to like these when I was younger, but this one's about teachers, which is why this particular person decided to gift it to me, because I'm a teacher. But I don't know. I'm just not like super interested in the Chicken Soup books, and I have a feeling I'm never gonna read this. Just a hunch, and so it's gonna go to a better home. The next book that I picked up is a thriller, and I rarely buy thrillers. It's a genre that I know very little about. I have very little experience with. I've read maybe 2 thrillers this year, and one I didn't like and one I really liked. This one, I'm not sure, but I've heard good things. I think I heard Krista from Books and Jams really liked this one, so that kind of made me curious. But it is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, I think. And so this one is about a woman who shoots her husband, and really no one can figure out why she shot her husband, but all we know is that she now will not speak. She has gone completely silent, and so different therapists and psychologists have tried to approach her and try to figure out what's going on with her. And then I think this criminal psychotherapist, Theo Faber, who is just entranced by her story, jumps at the opportunity to work with her, and he's determined to get her to talk. And so I'm going to assume that he does get her to talk, and that's where our drama unfolds. But I've heard that this is a really good thriller. It's not very long as far as books go. it's only 300 pages, so will be really good for a fast-paced book when I need something to kind of blow through and something that's going to make me turn the pages. And I'm still exploring whether or not I like thrillers and it's a genre for me. I think it is, but I've noticed a lot of thrillers can just not interest me that much. But this plot sounds really interesting. Next up, I'm going to Unhaul, A Poet's Choice by Edward Hirsch. This is a book that I have read. It's just a bunch of poets and different collection of poetry. It's kind of like a crash course in poetry. Poetry is not something that I gravitate towards. It's not that I don't like it. It's more that I forget that poetry exists. But I like poetry and I think it's fascinating. It was one of my favorite things to study in school, actually. I loved studying poetry. But this one is, again, just not something I see myself rereading. Nothing wrong with it, just don't think I'll reread it. If anything, I would rather collect the poetry from these people rather than have like a mashup of all these different poets. There's some really big poets in this book, but it's like little snippets of them. It's like a taster of poetry, basically. And so I'd rather get the actual poetry volumes of these authors, of these writers. So this is just, it's served its purpose in my life, but not going to reread it. Next up, this was not on the half-off book haul Barnes & Noble sale, but it was something that I plan on picking up in the next month or so. So this is the 7th volume of Fruits Basket. It is a manga, and I love this green cover. It's so cute. But this is a story about a family and a young girl who meets this family. So the young girl is kind of on her own. She has lost her family members. She is very much working on figuring out her life alone, and she has very little support from any family members. I think when we meet her, she has like a grandfather that's kind of looking after her, but the grandfather is sick, so really she's taking care of him. But she is kind of taken in by this family called the Somas, and the Somas have a family secret. They are all members of the zodiac. If a member of the opposite sex hugs one of these family members, then they turn into the animal of the zodiac that they represent. And so, for example, one of them is a cat, one of them is a rat, one of them is a horse. And so that is our basic premise, but then it's not the focus of the story. The focus of the story is much more about the dynamics between the characters and the antics and adventures that they get into. And there's some characters that kind of oppress the family and control the family within the family. And so our main female character kind of helps them deal with their family dynamics and brings the best out in them and helps them to be better people. It's a cute story. It can be very confusing because there are a lot of characters, and I honestly, sometimes I forget who is who and why I should care about one character over another. But yeah. Volume 7, I want to say there are 12 volumes in this collector's edition, so I am more than halfway through, which is awesome. So at this point, I feel like I have to finish Fruits Basket. I can't turn back now. I'm too close to the end, but it is enjoyable. I like it. It's fun. I will be unhauling these next couple books, and it's not because I don't like them. It is actually because I love them and I want to get better editions. There are definitely better copies, prettier copies that I would like to get. And so I'm not a person that tries to hang on to like multiple versions of books. I don't see any point in that. So I'm going to get rid of my old copy of The Hobbit and my bind up movie edition of The Lord of the Rings. I adore these books. I want to do a reread of them next year in 2020. Is my plan, but just these copies have outlived their life, and they're really just some pretty editions of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So I would like to get editions that make me aesthetically happy. But these are some of my favorite books of all time, so I'm definitely not unhauling them because I don't like them. In fact, I'm just unhauling them because I need better copies of them. The next book that I picked up is The Harp of Kings by Julia Marillier. This was not on the half-off sale, but it is a new release in September, and it's something that I wanted to pick up. I've heard great things about this author. She writes Celtic fantasy or Irish-inspired fantasy, and that's something I have not really read before, but it sounds amazing. And so this one in particular just sounds exactly like my cup of tea. The main characters are musicians, and our whole plot actually follows the characters trying to search for a harp that is going to basically help their society somehow. It might have magical powers, I'm not totally sure, but this just sounds really intriguing, and the main characters are musicians, and I'm a musician, and so what could go wrong, really? I'm excited about this. This is the first in a new series by this author. Since I have no prior background with this author, I did research pretty well on this, and it looks like I don't have to have read anything by her to enjoy this one. So hopefully that's true, because otherwise I'll be really confused the whole time, but it sounds like this is a new adventure by her, and so yay! It sounds just so much fun. I'm gonna read this in the month of September. I'm going to be unhauling my old copy of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I am currently reading this series, and I just rebought them in the, what do you call it? Words are escaping me. I rebought these in a set. Yes, in a set, like a boxed set. There we go. Why was that so hard for me? This copy was just my experiment copy. I didn't know if I wanted to read the whole series, and then I read this one, and I did. So I'm gonna get rid of this one. I have another copy of this book, so yeah, no need to keep this. The next book I found was in the bargain section of Barnes & Noble, and I don't have really any experience with this author, but it was only $7, and I have been wanting to pick this author up, but not necessarily this book in particular, but it sounds like it could be good. So this is a book by Joe Hill. It's actually 4 short novels in one, and they're in this version that they entitled Strange Weather. So we have 4 novels in this one, and they each have like a one-word title. So the first novel is called Snapshot, and it's about a Silicon Valley adolescent who finds himself threatened by a man who is taking pictures of people with a Polaroid that erase memories. So that's the first one. The second one is called Aloft, and it's something to do about a man who does a parachute jump, and he winds up on a cloud, and it's like a Prospero's Island of some kind. And the third book is set in Boulder, Colorado, and the clouds open up one day in a downpour of nails, and it like hurts everyone as it comes raining from the sky, and that one's called Rain. And then the fourth novel in this is called Loaded, and it is about a mall security guard in Florida who courageously stops a mass shooting and becomes a hero to the modern gun rights movement. But under the glare of the spotlights, his story begins to unravel, taking his sanity with it. Next up, I will be unhauling a book that I didn't read. I actually tried to read this, DNF'd it, but that is Everybody Always by Bob Gough, and I could be talked out of this one. This has a lot of really high praise, but for some reason I couldn't get into it. It seemed kind of fluffy. I don't know. It wasn't the book that I was looking for at the time, but it is a Christian book, and Bob Gough has done wonderful things for the world, and he has a non-profit organization in Uganda that helps women and children, and so I'm sure this is fine, but for some reason there was like a tone of this book of like, look how awesome I am and look at the cool things that I've done, and I was not really down for that tone with a book like this. I could be wrong, I could be way off base on this, but it just wasn't working for me, so I put it down. Let me know if you think I should read this, if you happen to know anything about this book, but for now it's going in the unhaul pile. This next book was also in the Barnes & Noble bargain section, so I don't remember what I paid for it, but not very much, and that is The Star-Spangled Banner, The Unlikely Story of America's National Anthem. I rarely pick up nonfiction unless it's really interesting to me. This one I think is going to have some really interesting tidbits about America and about this song. The Star-Spangled Banner is one of those songs that is surprising that it's a national anthem, because for one reason it's very hard to sing. It's got a very wide vocal range, and so a lot of people have a really hard time singing this. It's not a very accessible national anthem. And then I guess it was also, it has some like controversial roots. Francis Scott Key, the writer of the song, was a Southern slaveholder, so that's another thing. And he also got the melody from some drinking songs, like American drinking songs about the joys of mixing alcohol and sex. So an unlikely national anthem indeed. And so this, I'm curious of how much it has. It has to say a lot. It's not that short of a book, but it should be interesting. I don't read a lot of history, but this one is about music, and it just sounds like I will learn something from this. So yeah, maybe I'll pick this up for Nonfiction November. There's an idea. This next book that I'm unhauling makes me a little bit sad. This is The Descendant of the Crane by Joan He. And I really wanted to like this book. I got 50% of the way through and put it down. This is a YA fantasy. Everything about this book sounded great, and then I found it to just be really boring. It is a mystery mashed with a fantasy, and I found that it wasn't told very well, in my opinion, and it just didn't grab me. We were about halfway through the book, and I still felt like I had no idea what was going on, which was too bad because I really wanted to like this. It sounded really good, but it's gonna go to someone else who hopefully will enjoy it more than I did. The last book that I'm going to haul in this video is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This one is a bit of a booktube favorite recently, and it is a murder mystery of some kind, but it's also like got like a Groundhog Day kind of thing happening where Evelyn Hardcastle dies every day until our character Aidan Bishop can identify her killer and break the cycle. But every time the day begins again, Aidan wakes up in the body of a different guest, and some of his hosts are more helpful than others. So I am always interested in a plot like this. I love the kind of every day is the same situation, but you have to figure out how to get out of the cycle. I really like that premise, and so this one I know is very beloved and very popular, so hopefully it works out for me. And then the last book I have to show you that I'm unhauling is another one that I'm really sad about. I actually did read this all the way through, and every day I ask myself, why? Why did I finish that book? It was not good. And that was Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. This is maybe a controversial pick because I know a lot of people really like Marlon James. This was my first experience with him. It was a fantasy novel that he wrote, but man, is this a difficult book. It has very graphic scenes. The writing style is very difficult to understand. There's very much some stream of consciousness things that didn't click with me, and just it's grim, it's bleak, there's no hope. There's really just no hope. Apparently this is going to be a series. I have no interest in reading the series because apparently it's going to be the same story told from other characters' perspectives, and I'm not willing to put myself through that again. It's hard. It's a hard read. I also know people love this book and praise it as like one of the best books ever, but not for me. So there you have it. I have hauled some books, I have unhauled some books, and that way my conscience feels okay with my splurge that happened with this Barnes & Noble sale. Can't help it. New books, half off. Who could resist? Let me know if you've read any of the books that I hauled, or if you want to talk me out of any of the books that I unhauled. I could be talked out of maybe one or two of them. So, I don't know. Do your worst. I hope you're having a great day. I hope your reading life is going well. Keep reading great books, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.